All right, welcome here, everyone. So glad that you are here. I am Brianne Dick. I'm the co-founder of the Visionary CEO Academy. And with me, I've got Dusty Arab, who does all of the marketing strategy stuff, not only for VCA, but also for our clients. She's amazing. And Dusty, I think this is such a good conversation to have today to take people through this demand gen checklist, because this is the tool that you use with our business and with all of our clients to make sure that they are, number one, focused on the right things in their marketing, and number two, that they're not going to go and spend a whole bunch of money trying to hire a whole bunch of people only to realize that they have spent all their money and they're not getting any results.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, since I went through VCA's program and everything else, what was really telling to me is how everybody was like, I'm ready to hire like right this second. And almost everybody like is coming, most of them are coming in with like a VA or like some kind of like lower level assistant, which is fantastic. They definitely need that in place, but almost everybody is coming in thinking that they need to hire somebody high level for marketing. Yeah. And that just couldn't be less true for most of them.
Well, and I think the reason that this happens is that folks they're stuck on this content treadmill where they're constantly having to produce stuff for all the channels. They're doing all the things. And by the time you're making $250,000, $500,000, your business has too much going on for you to be stuck doing all the things. And that's where this demand gen checklist comes into play, because it helps you really figure out like what's working, what's not, where you should be focusing. And when you're actually ready to bring in someone to hire, which, pro tip, as Dusty said, is not like today, probably. There's probably other things you can do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very, very true. And on the one hand, like I absolutely, as a marketer, obviously, yes, please hire me. But, on the other side of things, like I understand why people go first towards that marketing and sales position, because so many people are suffering from launch burnout. Like it's been cycle after cycle. They're finally making some money. They're like, great, let's get rid of this. But, what ends up happening is pretty obvious. Their sales are going to drop off. Yeah. So and I think that especially as they're beginning to start making those transitions, particularly people towards the end of VCA, for instance, it's really important for them to have an eye to these things so that they don't see that revenue dip.
Exactly. Well, and I want to actually go into the workbook. And if you're watching this on Facebook, you can just comment below, comment workbook, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of the workbook that we're going through with this. It has the checklist, have all of it. If you are watching somewhere else out there on the interwebs, there should be a link on this page, just down below this video, where you can click and get the workbook, all of that kind of stuff. But let's go into this, Dusty, because I really want to dive into, you touched a little bit on why people think that hiring is the right solution. And you talked about how it leads to a revenue dip. Let's talk about that a little bit more, because that's the problem that we're trying to avoid here. So why does that happen?
Well, the reason that happens when we're looking at the big picture here, for anybody who hasn't seen the Visionary CEO Pyramid, we have so many videos on it, but down here at the bottom, we have our helpers and implementers. Now, those are the people who are actually doing the things in your business. And for you right now, it's probably you. You're probably handling a lot of this stuff. Now, as we're kind of moving up there, you're starting to look at the management level. Maybe you have a marketing manager, once you're getting up to that $1 million level, beyond that, so that there's somebody who is kind of organizing all of the implementation happening. So as we continue up the pyramid, then we're looking at leaders. And then up here at the top, we have visionaries. And I totally skipped some things here. The leadership role, that's where you're talking strategy. So that's where you're talking to somebody like me. So if we are taking, the 10,000 foot view of your business, and we're starting to say, okay, well, given everything that's gotten us to this point, what is going to take us to that next revenue level, right? So the thing is I am expensive. I am very, very expensive. So starting with someone like me just doesn't make sense here.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention that strategy lives up here, doing the stuff lives down here. And then there's this intermediate, the what level. What even are we trying to accomplish? And what I've seen happen so often is that people are like, I don't want to do this stuff anymore. I want to just be able to focus on the strategy, or I just want to be able to focus on the vision. And what happens is two things. Number one, they don't actually replace themselves at this level. And number two, they forget about this level. And so it's like we've got a Jenga tower and they're the blocks on the bottom. And they're like, oh, I'm just going to go take this block from the bottom and I'm going to put it on top. And then the whole Jenga tower falls down because they haven't actually replaced themselves on the do the stuff level. And what I've seen, and I think you've seen this as well, Dusty, is people going like, oh, I'm going to hire a strategist and they're going to like make it so I don't have to be in the weeds, and I'm going to be able to get out of my marketing, and I'm going to be able to, stop doing all of these things. And what they don't realize, as you said, is that the strategist is coming in at the strategy level. Like they're way up at that leader level. They're not coming in to do this stuff. And if you don't have a repeatable way of doing the stuff that doesn't require you to be there and do it, you're constantly going to get pulled back down. And now you just have this other expensive hire that it's kind of like, why are you, this is what I hear from people. Why am I even paying this person? Because they're not actually helping me make money, because the truth is that the money making is happening down here and you're still the one doing that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I think that's something else important to note here. And we talk about this a lot, in our community Slack channels, is that good implementers have a shelf life. So even if you do have somebody who's really good for a couple of years, if they're good, they're going to, I started as a copywriter, they're going to end up working their way to the strategic level. So like, in addition to like just needing the stuff done, there's this additional piece that we cover in other areas where that is a role that you're going to probably be continuously having to fill in some way, which means you have to have that strategic, your view of how you want all of those things done kind of in line with that too.
Yeah. And I think what's so interesting about, when I think about, because for me, it's always why do people do this, right? Well, number one, they gotta get out of the weeds. They don't want to have to be spending their time on the marketing treadmill. But at the end of the day, the result that people are actually shooting for is they want new sales on repeat, right? They want to be able to just keep getting new sales and not have to be constantly pushing this boulder uphill to make it happen. They want to feel as though those results and those sales will keep coming, even if they take vacation, even if they go away, even if they fall sick or something like that, right? They want done without you results, if you will. And they want the profit to feel predictable. So they don't have to keep oh, we didn't sell anything this month. Now I have to go and do this launch, or I have to, go and create a new product to create a tripwire and do all of these things, because we get reactive when these things don't work out the way we want. And for all of that to happen, there's a better way to get those results than hiring someone at the high level of the visionary pyramid. And that's the actual checklist part that we want to talk about. And again, if you want to get a copy of this checklist so you can actually use it, Facebook group, just copy, what did we say? Workbook, I think, just comment workbook and grab it. Otherwise, link below, grab it there. So take me through this checklist, Dusty. What are we actually looking at? Because essentially this is helping us to audit our marketing process to see, are we ready to hire someone?
Totally. So I would say that the biggest difference between this and the way that, online marketing is traditionally taught is that the idea of a funnel here definitely changes. So funnel is very top down, all of these people filter down into this down here. And this doesn't think that way, especially with smaller businesses that, especially if you're a small business with high ticket, you need a lot less leads, first of all. So it's not just about filling the top of your funnel with tons of people who may buy someday, right? So as we're looking at this, we have 4 main areas, and we have it split into demand and then leads themselves. So demand, if we're looking at generate, so, you could kind of think of this as traffic. What are the different ways that we are beginning to generate demand? Are people actually beginning to respond to what's happening there?
Yeah. So in our business, the way that we generate demand is We go and we do workshops for other people's audiences, right? So I'll go and do a talk in someone else's mastermind, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people who didn't even know that VCA existed and who didn't even know that BizOps was a thing and who didn't even know any of this stuff, now they know it. And we started to generate demand, right? We started to bring awareness to a market that didn't know that we existed and didn't know that this solution existed, right? And we'll talk a lot more next week. Actually, I think I'm going to be doing a training on what demand gen is and how it's different than a funnel. So if this whole concept of demand gen is new to you, don't worry. For now, just ask yourself, what are the things I do to get myself in front of new people? Or what are the things that the business does to get the business in front of new people? So that's generate. What about nurture, Dusty?
So nurture, those are all the different places that we have touch points with our people that aren't gated. And that I feel like is extremely important. These are the conversations that we're having with people on Facebook, before they even become a lead. This is how we're beginning to, wherever we're generating that demand, wherever we're pulling in people, this is where the conversations are happening. So even the way that we're giving away all of these different resources recently, that is all part of how we're nurturing our greater community here.
Yeah. So the question here is essentially, how are you doing content marketing, right? You've got this generated interest. Where are you going to be able to nurture those people? And as Dusty said, this is ungated, right? So it's not pay for a tripwire. It's not even, opt in for this thing. It's where are you going to nurture people who are so jaded that they don't want to opt in? Or where are you going to nurture people without really worrying too much about are they my ideal client or not, right? Where are you going to speak to this audience that you're building and curate and nurture and bring them to a place where the next step is that they self-identify as a lead.
Which brings us right into our next section. And identify is exactly what it says it is. So that's where we're talking about our hand raisers. Where are the people who are already saying that, yes, I have this problem, and clearly you have some solutions where we can have a conversation and see if it's a good situation for me.
Yeah. This is where we're talking about things like opt-ins, or we're talking about low ticket trainings, like what might be called tripwires, right? According to the Ryan Deiss school of thought, right? Really what we're talking about here, though, and what you said, Dusty, is so important, is this isn't just an opt-in about the 5 things you need to blah, 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 blah. This is specifically an opt-in designed to have someone say, I have this problem. I want this tool because it'll help me solve it. And that's important because when someone raises their hand for that solution, they're saying, I actually also have this problem, which means we're in a position to be able to go to our last step, which is invite them.
Exactly. And the way that you're inviting people can look so many different ways. At VCA, we have an application that we do with people. We also offer to get on the phone with people. Whatever you want your sales situation to look like, it can happen here. And I feel like whatever you're generating, whatever your particular generation methods are, wherever your nurturing is happening, that gives you clues on the different ways that you should be inviting people.
Yeah. And so, in general, folks are going to be doing these 4 things, right? Maybe they haven't thought about it in these terms, but there's some way that they're doing traffic. There's some way that they're nurturing. There's some way that they're getting people to raise their hand and say, I have this problem. And there's some way that they're making invitations and then moving people into a buying conversation.
Right.
And when I look at this, I know I look at the demand gen checklist, there's only 3 spots under each of these. And I can imagine some folks out there being like, I have a lot more nurture systems, or I have 20 different opt-ins. I don't have room to list those all. So talk to me about that part of the checklist, Dusty, because that's really an important component of whether or not you're ready to hire someone.
Absolutely. So we mentioned in several of the posts leading up to this, in particular, the content hamster wheel. And I know every single person out there understands exactly what we're talking about because we have all done it. We've all done it, but we are past those days for online marketing. Simple is better. Simple is better.
Let's hope we're past it.
Oh God. Ooh. the bad old days. 3 is the maximum that you should be looking at. under $1 million.
Yeah. I mean, like one or two, if one or two is working, I hear a lot of people say like, oh, you should only focus on one channel until you get to $1 million. It's actually, you should only need one channel in each of these 4 areas that's working. Right. Because one channel in any one of these 4 areas will get you there. And maybe you want to have like a little less risk, or maybe you just, want to repurpose your content and you can use it in multiple places. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, you got more than 3 places you're generating, more than 3 ways you're nurturing, more than 3 ways you're identifying, and more than 3 ways you're inviting. You've got a mess. Likewise, if you look at this and it's like, oh, I'm not actually generating anything, guess what? You can't nurture demand and you can't get leads if you're not doing a generate activity. And that's what this F column here is, right? That's the frequency. How frequently are you generating demand? If it's once every 6 months, that's probably where your lead generation problem is coming from. It's actually up in the demand gen area. Similarly, if you only are making invitations every 6 months because you have a launch cycle, you're missing out on a whole lot of opportunity in the middle here to be able to be saying, hey, you're ready to buy now because you've raised your hand, but I'm going to make you wait 6 months. And it creates this artificial buying, and they might go buy from someone else, or they might decide that this isn't a problem they need to solve in the meantime.
Absolutely. Well, and I think too, that the other thing, like moving right into this next section here, how well is the thing actually working?
Exactly.
Because usually this is why we end up with so many of these different options here. It's because something isn't quite working the way we thought it would. So we just move on to the next thing, because we're sales and marketing people for the most part. And that's just what we do. We're like, oh, I'll just create another thing, another resource, another something. Or we could try something different. So VCA, we like the stoplight system for a lot of different reasons, but mostly because it makes it really, really clear where you should actually be spending some time here, or what you should stop doing. So over in statuses, we've got red, yellow, green. Is it working the way you want it to? You get 1 point. Is it repeatable? You get another point. And if you really, really have it down, then it should be demonstrating your purpose, values, mission.
Yeah. And I think, to really dig into that, does it work the way you want? It's like, not only is it generating the results, but is it worth the effort? Because I know a whole lot of people who are like, oh yeah, it makes me sales. And then you dig in, it's like, yeah, it makes me sales once every 6 weeks, I'll get a sale from it. But in the meantime, I spent hundreds of person hours putting into this. And it's like, oh, well, when I look at it that way, it's not really worth the results and effort. Similarly with repeatable, it's like, oh yeah, my launches work great. And I actually don't mind the amount of effort because I love launching. But are you just creating brand new launches every time? Do you have a system that you're following, or are you just making it up as you go along? Because going back to kind of this main topic, if it's not working the way you want it to, and it's not repeatable, you definitely shouldn't be hiring someone, because you don't actually know what's working. And yeah, you could bring in someone to look at your business and say, that's not working. But I've done this before, and I can tell you what's going to happen. You're going to bring them in, and they're going to spend 3 or 6 months digging through all the stuff you've tried and coming up and wanting to try all the same experiments you've done, only to get to the point where they're like, oh, so this is the one thing that's working. So you'll have paid them thousands of dollars for months for them to be able to say, oh, this is the one thing that's working. Or you could fill in this checklist with your generate, nurture, identify, and invite activities, do this color coding here, and quickly identify, this is the one channel that's working here for generate. This is the one channel that's working here for nurture. This is the one that's working here for identify. And this is the one that's working here for invite. And if you have one channel in each of those, that's green. It's working the way you want. It's repeatable, and it's demonstrating your values in action. Then you can hire, not because you need some fancy high-level strategist, but because you can hire someone to do the stuff that you've got a repeatable system that works, and you can hire someone to implement, which actually gets you out of the day-to-day because it moves you up the visionary pyramid.
Exactly. And this is why, like, once you do have these things at green, hiring something like an in-house copywriter is such a great choice, because those are the kinds of people who are, generally speaking, conversion focused. They know how to improve like your conversion rates and your sales in all of the things that they're creating. So that's actually going to start taking work off of your plate.
Right. And they're going to be less expensive. They're going to be more effective. They're going to be onboarded faster. And because you're not asking them to come up with a new system, but instead you're asking them to implement a system that's already working, they're going to be ROI positive much faster because they're going to start by doing the stuff that works. And then they're going to be able to say, oh, I know that we could make it better if we improved on XYZ, instead of saying, let's completely replace what's been working with this whole other system, which again, that's what too many people do. That's why they're going to hire this strategist, is because they think they need to do something completely different and they don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that happen so many times. Like, and I feel like that's never been my approach. Like it's never been my approach to just like upend people's businesses, because I think it's a really bad idea for so many reasons. Like the systems that are there have probably been developed for a reason, at least with some amount of thought there, regardless of what their software stack looks like, et cetera. But it's so important to be like, to not just try to offload your marketing. Like it's never going to go away. You're in business. Like we might as well find something that's going to work that, you don't mind doing for a while, so that we can eventually have somebody else be in charge of this piece of it. But this is how you get back to getting to like do it the fun way again.
Yeah. This is where it's like, and that's why part of it is, does it work the way you want? Is it worth the effort that you're putting in for the results that you're getting? Like that's the first question. If the answer is it's not working, then let's focus on what is working. And so, number one, download this checklist. Like, I think that's the first takeaway from this, right? Download the checklist and actually put in your stuff and check, are we doing these things? Are we doing them often enough? And red, yellow, green, how are they working for us? Are they something that we should be investing more of? And then if you look at your map and you're like, it's red, yellow everywhere, then the next step, as far as I'm concerned, is to actually dig into why they're red, yellow and improve that, right? To optimize number one, if it's red, stop doing it. If it's yellow, figure out how to optimize it and make it work repeatedly better, et cetera, so that it gets to green.
And this, I'm just going to take a second and give us a plug here, because if you want to do this with us, this is literally something we can help you go through at Visionary CEO Academy. You're going to be auditing some of your own stuff, but you're going to be doing it with the end in mind, very much with like, if there are some issues happening in your demand gen right now, if your sales and marketing is kind of red, yellow, that's okay. We can fix it. We can figure out, which pieces are going to actually be worth the effort, what's going to start improving your ROI, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah. And then once you get it to green, as we said, that's when you're actually ready to hire the marketer. And again, in the academy, we've got a process for identifying what is that job, who's going to do it, who are you actually looking to hire, and all of that, so that you can truly get yourself out of the weeds instead of just hiring someone with a fancy title that's going to leave you still doing all of the execution work. So Dusty, did I miss anything? Did we cover what we wanted to cover with this checklist today?
I think we did. I think we got it all.
All right. Well, again, if you want a copy of this checklist and you're watching on Facebook, you can just go ahead and type in workbook in the comments and we'll make sure that you get a copy of it. If you're watching elsewhere, go ahead and hit the link below to download that and get access to all of the goodies. That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the training, and we'll see you next time for another training next week. See you then.